Hello guys, welcome back to my channel Algorithm Mind. My name is Hasan Khuram and in this channel I teach programming skills in Python, MATLAB or R programming. I also teach theoretical concepts as well as practical programming skills in data analysis, data science, statistical analysis. And I have started a series of tutorial videos on statistical analysis in Python, and in today's lecture we are going to discuss about the conditional probability and how we can actually formulate an example with the Python programming of conditional probability and calculate that conditional probability. So before we actually can jump onto the conditional probability, an example like how we actually implemented a conditional probability method in Python programming, let's just briefly discuss about what is conditional probabilities and what are its terminologies. To start with, conditional probability is a fundamental concept in theoretical probability theory. It allows us to evaluate the likelihood of an event occurring given that another event has already happened. In other words, it answers the question, what is the probability of an event A given that of event B has already occurred? Okay, so I will repeat that again. What is the probability of an event A occurring given that event B has already occurred? So that's the core definition of conditional probability. So, but there are some other key points that we can consider. So we have discussed earlier that conditional probability is the likelihood of an event occurring given that another event by assumption, presumption, assertion or evidence is already known to have occurred. We denote the conditional probability of an event A occurring given that conditional event B has already occurred by using this notation here, P. Then we define round brackets, and then within round brackets we have A, and then we have B. So what is, again, to read it out, I will read it again. So what is the probability of an event A occurring, the first alphabet, given that event B has already occurred? Okay, so we are interested in finding the probability of event A where the event B has already occurred. So this is how you write conditional probability. Okay, so what is the formula of conditional probability? The conditional probability formula is as follows. We have conditional probability of A given B is equal to conditional probability of joint probability of event A and B occurring divided by the probability of event B occurring. So that's the formula for conditional probability. Then we have a P A union B union represents the joint probability that events A and B occur together. Okay, and probability PB is the probability that the event B had occurred. What is the probability of event B occurring? So we have like a sample space A here that belongs to the probability of A occurring. Then we have a sample space B, which is correspond to the probability of B occurring. Then we have an intersection of A and B, which is the joint probability of event A and event B occurring together. So this is the formula of conditional probability, and you can see that probability that A occurs given that B has already occurred. Joint probability divided by probability of B. Now let's move on to actually discuss about the example that we are going to use in order to calculate conditional probability by using Python programming. So consider a family with two unknown children. We make an assumption each child is equally likely to be a boy or a girl. So there is an equal probability that each child might be a girl or might be a boy. The gender of the second child is independent of the gender of the first child. So it means that whatever the first child is, either be a boy or it be a girl, it doesn't matter, and the gender of the second child is independent of the gender of the first child. So we can create a table to represent the probabilities, child 1, child 2 probabilities. This is a tabular form of data. Like for example, what is the probability of having like boy and boy is 1 by 4, that is 0.25. What is the probability of first child is boy, the second child is girl? 1.4. And what is the probability of both children are being a girl? That is also 1 divided by 4, 0.25. So let's move on to actually programming, which is, I believe, all of you are quite interested. So we have done the theoretical part. Now let's move on to the practical programming skills, where we actually implement conditional probability in Python programming. For this purpose, I'm going to import a module called random in Python library. So if we are using this Python statement, I'm going to import the module import random. Then in the second block of code, I'm going to define a class that has a name kid, and that class has an attribute, an init method, where the class, where whenever the object is being called, it will be assigned the instance of the class will be assigned, and the attributes of that method here, def in itself, will generate the attributes, or we can say that the data for that object, which are called the instance of that object. And if you are being overwhelmed by the concept of classes, objects, instance of a class, I have a very resourceful video that I just recently published. I suggest you to go to and watch that video. It's a highly resourceful video about object-oriented programming in Python, where I have discussed these kinds of concepts in detail. So I will put the link in the description for you, so you can go and check that video. So that being said, so for this block of code, you know that I have defined a class named kid, and that class kid has an init method where with the data attribute, where the attributes of the object are being defined, and we are using random method, random.choice method of the module random, that will randomly pick either a boy or a girl. So whenever an object is formed, object in our case is a kid, or for a family, he can either have a boy or a girl. That is randomly chosen by using this function choice between a boy and a girl. So whenever the object is being made, we will have a randomly chosen either a boy or a girl. So let's get back to a little bit about the conditional probability as we have discussed earlier, and try to correlate it with our example here. So what the conditional probability we are actually interested in, we are interested in what is the probability of having both girls. So what is the probability of having both childs as girls, given that we have at least one girl in a child. So in other words, we can say that what is the probability of having both girls, given that the first child is also a girl. So okay, so this is the conditional probability you are currently interested in. And if you recall the formula of conditional probability, so according to that formula, so in order to calculate this kind of specific probability, we are going to have the probability of joint probability of that, such that we have both girls and at least one girl is at least one child is a girl. So this is a joint probability of both events. Then we have divided by probability of at least one girl. Since every family born with both girls automatically has at least one girl, so in that case, our interested probability, which is the probability of both girls, have given that we at least one girl, we have at least one kid as a girl, is the same as the probability of having both girls. So in that case, we can happily transform that formula into this formula here, which the formula is expressed as the probability of having both girls, given that one child is at least a girl, is equal to the number of families with both girls divided by number of families with at least one girl. So this is the formula we are going to use in order to calculate the conditional probability. So in order to calculate the probabilities, I'm going to simulate a case where we have like 1,000 or 10,000 families, and each 10,000 families will have given an option to have two childs, and the gender of those two child will be defined by this function class here, class kid, where this class will randomly pick either a boy or a girl. So this code, let me just give you a overview of this function first, then I will get to the details or nitty-gritty of that function. So this function will run 10,000 times, and for 10,000 times it will calculate what kind of what child does a single family has, and it will do for both kid 1 and kid 2. So it will pick randomly whether this family has child 1 a girl or child 2 a boy, and then it will calculate the total amount of girls and total amount of have both children having as girls, and based on that we will count the total number of girls, and based on that we are going to calculate the probabilities. And once we have that, we can actually execute the code and calculate our probabilities and have our desired probability, which is the probability of having both girls given at least one girl, at least one kid is a child, is at least one kid is actually a girl. So now let's move on to actually discussing about the function here. So I have defined a function def simulate family, and it takes input argument number of families, like what are the total number of families we are going to calculate the probability of. Then after taking the inputs, we are declaring or initializing two variables, both girls count and at least one girl count. So we are equating it to equal to 0. So because we are going to apply the for loops, and we are going to count the values for each iteration. Its values will be changed, values will be updated when we will get a new value after each iteration. So right now we have set these values to equal to 0. Now let's move on to actually applying the for loop. For the for loop, I'm going to apply the loop for family in range num families. So the loop will run number of times based on the number of families we have defined earlier. So you can see here I have applied like 100,000 values family. I have declared 100,000 families, so it will run that much amount of time. And for each iteration I will call the class, and I will create the instance of class, and here I will create an object. Could be either a boy or girl. So once I create an object of that class kid, I will actually have a value either a boy or a girl. Okay, for example, let's assume that we have kid 1 and kid 2 both equal to girl. So in that case we have both values equal to girl. In that case, once we have had called the class for a specific iteration, or let's say for the first iteration, it will check the condition that such that if kid 1 dot gender is equal to girl and kid 2 gender is also equal to girl, then we are going to add 1 to both girls count. Okay, so because basically it's updating the value and says that for this specific value both children are actually girl. Okay, and for the second condition we are going to test is that if girl in kid 1 gender or kid 2 gender. So in this Python statement we are using if statement, and within if statement we are creating a condition that could either be true or false, and in that specific condition we are checking whether kid 1 gender or kid 2 gender is girl. Okay, is a girl. If that's so, and if like any one of the children is actually a girl, it doesn't matter like one children is boy and one children is girl. If any one children is actually a girl, then we will also add 1 to this variable at least one girl count. So for a specific iteration it will check both conditions, and once that it found that condition is true, that for example for the first case says that both the kids are actually girls, then we actually add both girls count, then we actually add 1 to the both girls counts. And if it checks that if any one of the children is actually a girl, then it will add value 1 to the variable at least one girl count. So by this iteration, for a first iteration it will do this operation, and the value of both girls count and at least one girl count will be updated. Then this iteration will run again and again until our desired range is achieved, which is of 100,000. And after we have done that, we will have actually stored the total number of families that has both girl counts, and we will also have the total number of families that had at least one girl count. And once we have done that, once we have calculated the total amount or total count, we can actually calculate the probabilities of those based on those values. So in order to calculate the probability of both girls, so example, what is the probability of family having both girls given we have like 100,000 families? So in that case we are going to just simply divide divide the variable both girl counts by the num families. And what is the probability of at least having one girl as a child in a family? In that case, we are going to divide the variable at least one girl count divided by num families. So these are the probability of, we can actually happily say that these are the probabilities of event A and event B. Probability of event A is actually both girls, both children are actually girl, and probability of event B is as such that at least one child is a girl. Now you understand the probabilities, and based on these values, if you recall that our conditional probability formula is actually the number of families with both girls and number of families with at least one girl. So we are simply going to divide these two variables in order to get the conditional probability. But we have actually applied a simple if and else logic. It's nothing hard rocket science. So what I have actually done that I have actually simulated for a condition. For example, let me say that for example, let's say for all those families we have actually all the males boys. In that case, then we will have actually the value here is equal to 0. For example, in that case, for example, let's consider for all the 100,000 families, we actually have both as boy as a children. In that case, at least one girl count will be equal to 0. So we have tried to actually omit that condition by using an if and else logic here. So it has said that if at least one girl count is greater than 0, then we are happily able to calculate our conditional probability by dividing the both girl count by the variable name at least one girl count. If that's not the case, and the value of actually at least one girl count is equal to 0, in which it implies that all the children are actually boys, then we have set conditional probability equal to 0. And once I have done all the calculations for loops, we are going to actually, and we have calculated the conditional probabilities and the probability, we are simply going to return the probabilities to the function where it has been called and declared to the variables. So let's move on and actually simulate the case. So for example, let's say we have like 100,000 families, and we are going to call the function simulate family, which we have declared earlier, and calculate the conditional probability and the probability of event A and event B occurring. Once we have calculated that, now we can simply just print the values by using print function, and within the print functions I'm using fstring method, which allows us to encapsulate the values of a variable within a string. So after calculating the values and printing them through print function, we have actually got the results of all cases. Like the probability of both children being girls is actually 0.2489. The probability of at least one girl in the family is 0.7507, and the probability of both children being girls given one child is actually a girl is 0.3315. So that's how you can actually implement a case of conditional probability in Python programming and calculate the conditional probability. That's it for now. I hope this tutorial have been very helpful to you, and I request you to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell icon button, because soon I will be posting more tutorial videos for the series of statistical analysis in Python, where I will be discussing about regression analysis, where I will be discussing about hypothesis testing, central tendency, variability, and all those things. So I request you to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for joining me, and I will catch you soon in the next video.